See, because for hangover, I go to pho.
Really? I need hollandaise sauce though. I feel like I need hollandaise sauce or like hash browns.
Oh no!
When I'm
See,
hungover.
I want to do that while I'm drunk. Still,
Wow.
When I wake up and I'm just got that splitting headache, and you're just like, or just that you're dehydrated, when you wake up and you're like,
So you want soup?
oh god,
You want soup? And
you want pho because it's got all the salt and all the
and it's hot, so
and all those flavors, everything.
Yeah,
it's hot, so it helps.
Yeah, so as you eat it, it's like a sauna. You're getting like steam.
You're getting a little bit of steam
the
as you're drinking the broth. It's got a lot of nutrients in it, and so it's replacing a lot of what you've lost.
Yeah, you know what? You got me in the mood, man. Pho sounds fucking great right now. Did you know that over $5 trillion exchanges hands on a daily basis? That's an average of over $220 billion an hour. Now, how does this much money move every single day, and why does it move the way it does? Here on Drunkenomics, two bartenders who also happen to be students at the University of Nebraska Graduate School of Business are going to sit down and drink to the global economy and try and translate it into English. So sit back, relax, pour yourself a stiff one, and have a drink with us to the comedy that is the global economy. All right, everybody, guess what? Welcome back to yet another presentation of Drunkenomics. This is the drinking podcast with an economics problem. So glad you all can join us. My name is Aaron Wong, and by the power vested in the VIX, for some reason, I'm your less gracious host, which would make you
both
the more gracious
James Goldwater and more gracious.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, it's by the. I don't know why we empowered the VIX. We might have to change our base number at some point. But
well, it used to be 18, but that's when the VIX actually kind of made sense.
Yeah, it hasn't. It's been about a year and a half since the last time I thought the VIX.
Yeah.
Aside from a few hiccups, I think the VIX as a whole is just not accurately represented.
Remember when it traded under 20 for like almost a half a year last year or something like that, like the beginning half of last year, and it's like, what the heck is going on? But now, like, I thought the VIX would shoot up because one, we had the Fed meeting, which happened earlier today. Today is Wednesday, November 2nd. In case you're wondering, this presentation will probably get dished out tomorrow, Thursday, November 3rd. But today is Wednesday, November 2nd. Earlier today at was it 2 p.m. Eastern?
1 or 2, yeah, 1.
So
1 o'clock, 2 o'clock Eastern.
1 o'clock Central. I think it was 1 o'clock Central, and it was 11 o'clock my time where I live in Arizona. But Fed came out with a decision to raise interest rates with 75 basis points. I thought options would be shooting through the roof. Like option volume would be shooting through the roof. So I was wrong on that. Bet still stands. I have 2 more trading days for the VIX to close above 32, which I don't think is going to happen. But I really thought that like the market pricing this pivot, which they shouldn't have. They're pricing the fact that they thought that the Fed was going to pivot away from this hawkish tone, which means that they're, at some point they're going to stop hiking and look towards
or stop hiking at the jumbo rate. I saw things about that too. They're saying like, oh, we expect a comment that they'll be like that they're going to reduce the amount of the hikes to 50 basis points in December, and I'm like, why?
Yeah.
What do you know about inflation that is not in any of the it's not in any of our indicators anywhere else?
And I blame Mary Daly. Like I seriously, I think it's Mary Daly's fault. But that's just me. But the other thing too is I think the VIX, I think it should have shot up also because the election, right? There's a lot of uncertainty around the election, and whenever there's uncertainty, you got to hedge, right? You got to you got to buy some calls or buy some puts or sell some calls or sell some puts against your portfolio, and protect yourself. But
that's the thing is
people are doing it. They're not doing it at the volume that I thought they were going to be doing it at. So that's why the VIX,
is as low as it is. Well, you'd think there'd be more just because you've got an election next week.
Yeah.
So you have midterm election next Tuesday. You had the Fed meeting today. And then you had the jobs report from was it Friday?
So
and we're still in a period where good news is bad news. Where so you see,
which doesn't make sense, but
you see amazing economic news, essentially from like the perspective of JOLTS and everything else, the jobs report numbers. And you're thinking, if you're smart in the markets, you're like, okay, well, absolutely nothing about this jobs report is going to it indicates to me that the Federal Reserve is going to taper off the rate hikes, is going to start discussing slowing them, or that soft pivot. I was like, what data are you?
I know.
And they were talking about today before the meeting. I'm like, what are you seeing?
Yeah, no,
this is not.
Yeah, I mean, we saw private payrolls. Everything looks good. But, speaking of news, if you want to keep up with news, because we tweet a lot about news, we post a lot of things on Instagram about the news. So I do encourage you to start to just like kind of pivot the conversation. real quick. But yeah, check us out on social media. It's at Drunkenomical, DRUNKE on my CAL. That's us on the metaverse. I don't want to call it the metaverse anymore. I just want to go back to Facebook and Instagram, which was their cash cow, but now
which is us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, all of which are having very serious problems right now. Let's be fair. Maybe not Instagram, but the other two certainly.
Well, it's really ironic that like we're on all three of those posts, and we have a TikTok, but we should probably do more things on it. But it's also ByteDance and TikTok are also going through their problems too. So
I don't know.
Social media everywhere.
Maybe we need to find out what the one that who was the
I don't know.
Hang on.
Well, either way, we just need to like stick to like LinkedIn. Because I think that's our pride and joy.
There.
We need to.
Well, Jack Dorsey's launching a new social media network apparently, so maybe we'll get on that and see what happens.
Yeah, but either way, check us out there, and then of course, you can find the link to our Discord, free to all. You can chat with a bunch of our econoholics. I feel bad. I just now am seeing this. I think I maybe saw it earlier, but I didn't respond right away, and then I forgot to respond to it until now. But Tim, what's up, man? How's it going? You can join our Discord to talk to the likes of, our righteous bloke, Tim, K. Nello. We had a lot of good conversations in there. A lot of people asking questions. You can post pictures of some of the things that you're filling and killing, such as me and my Irish whiskey.
Yeah, no, that's great. I was drinking some of the finest boxed wine earlier.
Nice. So if that's what you're filling and killing, feel free to mention it in there. And of course, we also have some non-financial advice. So yeah, definitely check that out. But, I don't know. A lot of things going on. I wish we had less things to talk about, but I guess we don't.
I wish there was fewer things to talk about and more time to do it, but alas, that is not the week we're having.
Yeah. And at some point, we will resume the conversation about what's going on in the U.S. Because too much is happening here. But also, another thing that's messing with the global supply chain is what's going on not in the U.S. as well. So do you want to start with Brazil? I think that's a good place to kind of kick things off.
Yeah. So they had their election. Mm-hmm. Speaking of elections causing uncertainty, and it was I guess so. Former President
Bolsonaro. Jair.
So Bolsonaro is the current. Yeah, Jair Bolsonaro.
Okay, he's the current president. That is
the current outgoing president.
Yes, exactly. And they brought in Lula,
as the former president.
Well, he's a former, but he's also Silva. Yeah, but he's a former. Yeah, Lula da Silva, is that his name? Last name, right?
Yeah,
former president. Yeah. Okay, there we go. Yeah, so former president, but also future president. It's kind of a weird situation in Brazil because like the guy that was in charge, a lot of people called him like the Trump of South America, like the President Trump of South America.
The currently sitting outgoing president of Brazil. They called him the South American Trump, the Brazilian Trump, whatever they want to say.
Jair Bolsonaro. That's him.
Jair
right?
Bolsonaro.
Yeah, so he's very much he's very much a low tax guy.
He's populist. He's been pretty bombastic in some of the things he's said and done.
Nationalist, populist, right? So
having said that, the election has occurred. While he hasn't conceded the election, he also hasn't disputed the result. So it's like, it looks like he's accepting the results of the election.
Yeah.
So that's a good thing. We should see stabilization now in if you really want to think about like one main thing, sugar. Yeah. Sugar production will be a lot more stable.
Yeah, but look, Brazil also they produce a lot of concrete. They produce a lot of iron ore. They produce soybeans. They're one of the countries that actually has a trade surplus with China. Which it's not a very long list. But to kind of understand like how the markets reacted to Lula, the new guy that is taking over, the markets didn't react very positively to the announcement of him winning the election. So one of the biggest Brazilian companies, I don't know if it could even be the biggest Brazilian company, but it's PBR. The ticker symbol is PBR, it trades, via ADR on the New York Stock Exchange. It's Petrobras, petroleum or something like that. It's it's 51% of the shares are owned by the Brazilian government.
Yeah, Petroleo Brasileiro.
Yeah, Petrobras or something like that.
Petrobras, yeah.
Petrobras is what I think Americans call it. But that company cratered, like the announcement of Lula winning the election. What is it fair? Is it unfair? I have no idea, but I think the general consensus is like he's gonna regulate the energy sector a little bit more, just because he's very much like a green energy kind of guy, and he wants to stop.
Yeah.
And this is something I actually support. I'm not ashamed to admit that I support this, but he's actually for the stopping of the deforestation of the Amazon rainforest. So I'm actually for that. Like I think the Amazon. I'm also a nerd by the Amazon rainforest. I'm so fascinated with it, and I think it's really cool how the Saharan desert replenishes the soil there. Like seriously, like look at. Like, I think that's something that if you want to just get your mind blown, look that up. But yeah, he's for stopping that. So I think cool.
I think there's a position that they think he's going to take a much stronger line on the ecology, that he's going to really kind of slow Petrobras down on its production of oil, on oil exploitation. There's also the fact that the reason he didn't run in 2018 is that he was in prison.
Yeah, exactly.
For corruption.
Yeah.
And,
there were questions. I mean, there were a lot of things on Petrobras's balance sheets and expenditures that were unaccounted for in the early 2000s when he was president originally. But mind you, I mean, when he was president, he was like the most popular president in Brazil, maybe the most popular president in Brazilian history.
Yeah, no, it is interesting.
Yeah.
So really, this is just meet the new boss, same as the old boss.
Nice. I love the Who reference, man. Yeah. After the last 2 weeks, all we do is make, English rock legend references.
English rock band jokes. Yeah.
So meet.
They're not all good. But yeah, this is just meet the new boss, same as the old boss. It's not, I think the great thing is you can look at what he did as president the last time around, and you can assume that that's the tack he's going to take this time. The only difference is that it's probably going to be harder to govern this time around. Yeah,
and I think a lot of the pieces that are put in place now, I think he's facing a much bigger uphill battle. And honestly, like speaking of uphill battles, of what's happening in the streets of Brazil, or people are protesting, Bolsonaro backers, people that like the current sitting president that's outgoing, they're upset. And Brazil is just like really a history of political turmoil. I mean, it was a military dictatorship until I think the 80s. And there was a military coup, and then the guy that just got elected in was thrown in jail for corruption. They brought in someone else. Was it Dilma Rousseff? I think was her name. She ended up getting impeached because she made all these big promises. She spent a ton of money on things like the Olympics, which I get. Like
or on the World Cup.
Yeah, and on the World Cup. Yeah,
so on the Olympics.
Yeah,
and you look at some of the World Cup decisions. It's like, okay, so you're building a stadium that could fit 80,000 people in the Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
Why?
Yeah, but she spent she spent a ton of money. Like she just drove up the deficit. Crime was getting worse, and economic conditions were also getting worse. So when you spend that much money and no one's lives are improving, it's like, okay, well, like get out of here. So that's what happened to her, and then her vice president ended up being in charge. Obviously, things still didn't improve that much under him. So, they went to the opposite side of the spectrum.
So you go to the other side. Yeah. Then you go, okay, well, let's get
Bolsonaro in. So, so yeah.
Yep.
But that's what's happening in Brazil. In case you guys are wondering, I actually did a little bit of research on this before recording. I don't know if it shows or not, but yeah, it's quite the situation. We'll see what happens. I don't know how restrictive Lula's policies are actually going to be.
Let's get him in office and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and a lot of his critics are like, he's very economically restrictive, but when he was president last time, like he did a lot of economic good. So we'll see. We'll just see what happens. Let's meet the new boss and then find out. Same as the old boss.
Exactly. It's not to jump around. Like if we're gonna look at like other instability and other things that are making me wonder about.
Absolutely.
Wonder about what's going on. Wonder why the VIX is so low. I'm looking at Iran as well. If we're looking at political instability and other things, we have continued riot or continued protests, continued push against the government.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like the thing about Iran was something that I didn't really know that much about until you brought it up in the recording, in the presentation from 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago.
Yeah, 4 weeks ago. Yeah.
Yeah. So just to bring everybody up to speed, in case you didn't listen to that presentation, there was a girl, I forget her name, Amini, Masha Amini. I feel bad, but basically
her name is Masa Amini.
Amini.
I think I'm pronouncing that right.
Okay,
yeah.
Okay.
So you were very close.
Gosh, okay, yeah. I feel bad for not knowing it, but
so the thing is that she is a Kurdish woman.
Yes,
was a Kurdish woman. That's one of the ethnic minority groups
in Iran. Yeah,
in Iran.
It's like,
and she was known by her Kurdish name, which was Gina, I guess is what she went by. She was deemed by the morality police to not be wearing her clothing correctly, to not be to not being conservative enough in her dress.
Yeah,
she
but
was
it's particularly it's
arrested and ended up dead.
Yeah, but particularly it's the headpiece, the hijab. I feel bad. I'm not saying that correctly, but I think that's what it was. She wasn't wearing that correctly. She went to go visit her brother, and then yes, the morality police arrested her. They say
that she fainted and died in their custody and
had heart failure.
Died of natural causes, and that's just not.
Well, I mean, so much evidence has come out since then, and there's still the crazy thing is
very likely.
Yeah, but like, I mean, someone posted a picture of her in the hospital, which like the Iranian government just immediately erased as quickly as they could. But outside of Iran, you can outside of Iran, you can see it, but in Iran, you can't. Which is kind of like the whole deal with China, right? Nothing happened in Tiananmen Square. So, people started seeing these images. People started like realizing, oh my God, like she got beat. Like someone beat her in this, and then the CT scan.
Yeah, and she was. Let's put it this way: she should have. They're in a coma, and it's.
Yeah, it's so it's a really tragic death. I mean, this is something that should not have happened, and of course, it riled everybody up. Like, I mean, people everywhere. I mean, even like other countries, like people are like doing all
internationally. This is being condemned.
Yeah.
Within Iran, it's just this is just. I have to imagine the straw that broke the camel's back. This is they're literally.
Oh yeah, at this point, this has been protested since the 80s. I mean, it's been protests for forever, but this is.
But this time, people have just been like, you know what, enough is enough.
Exactly. So
like I said, this is the number. They're the number 6
in oil reserves, right? It's number 6 in oil reserves.
Yeah, they have 10% of the world's proven oil reserves.
Okay. Wow, that's
right.
That's a lot. Doesn't help that everybody else is draining their reserves, but I mean, regardless.
So they have 10% of the world's proven oil reserves. They're in a pretty volatile area.
Yeah.
Them being one of the more volatile groups in the area or nations in the area.
Absolutely.
Not that anyone else is really trying to walk that one back, but it doesn't. So for me right now, I'm surprised oil's trading low. I'm surprised the futures contracts are trading as low as they are, because there's apparently intelligence out there that suggests that Iran has stated they're willing to attack either Saudi Arabia or parts of Iraq because they think that the protests are being fed by other interests.
Yes, absolutely, yeah. So one of the things, and the reason why I bring this up, one, this is a really tragic story, and I think it's something that I've paid a lot of attention to, since you talked about it. But the other thing too is, about a week ago, which is not long after we recorded last week, but certainly before the episode was dropped, the protests went all the way to the oil workers in Iran. They're striking.
So oil and petrochemical employees are now on strike in some places.
Exactly. They're not going to the factories, and they're grabbing stones and blocking the roads to those factories. So people that aren't striking have a tough time getting to work as well.
Which is you're starting to see a breakdown in civil order, and it has reached economic. It's now economic. It's no longer just people in the streets. It's now reaching economic significance. Certain operations are being shut down.
Yeah,
it's very reminiscent.
I mean, you don't have to go back too far to find
of the Russian Revolution of 1917. The Bolshevik Revolution of 1917.
Yeah, I mean, you really don't have to go back too far to look for a comparison. I mean, earlier this summer, the Dutch farmer protests, which I think are still going on actually, and then we had the Chinese bank protests. It's all very similar to this, right?
Except this one's between China and this one, there's a certain level of violence. The European farmers, that's civil.
Yeah.
There's no violence there.
Yeah, but I mean, this is the thing is like they're protesting against a certain regulation that they don't like. And in this case, it's, the act of the protest itself is causing a disturbance in the supply chain. But I think it's pretty well justified in these cases, right? Like, they don't like being told what to do and how to do their jobs and how to live their lives. And they say, hey, remove this law and we'll stop protesting, which I think is fair. That's how you should, that's how you should protest, know what you want. And if you get it, stop protesting, right? That's
absolutely.
That's exactly how it should work.
You get what you. It's very much one of those like, okay, when you get what you asked for, and if you're not happy, if you get what you asked for, and you're sitting there going, oh, I should have asked for more. Well, yeah, you should have, but also you got what you asked for, so it's like, oh, well, all right then, it's time to call it a day.
Yeah, I mean, don't ask for a side of fries.
You don't keep at it, but the difference is in Iran, they're not getting what they ask for.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, you're starting to see a little bit of some cracks within the leadership, kind of, well, maybe you don't have to wear a hijab at all times, but this is very much the problem when you run into some governments, especially theocratically based ones, where it's okay, if we don't have to do this publicly anymore, exactly why did we have to for so long? What is? Well, hang on. Like it's that whole like
the rules without explanation.
My comparison, because I was just at an airport. It's like 7 times out of 10 when I go to the airport, they're like, take out your laptop, take off your shoes, blah blah blah. Yeah. Put them in bins as they go through, but then you get those 3 times where they're like,
you don't need to take your
electronics out, you don't need to take your shoes off. And I'm like,
what exactly
hang on,
are we being protected
why
from?
don't we need to? They're like, oh, well, we're busy. We're just trying to keep things moving smoothly. And I'm like, so what you're saying is because things are backed up, safety, we're less safe. Well, no, you're not any less safe. Well, then, okay, so you're telling me that 7 times out of 10, it's unnecessary.
Yeah.
Well, which is it?
It's unnecessary.
Is this unnecessary? Or am I less safe now? Which one
is it?
Please tell me. Yeah. Are you a criminal or a lie? Are you an idiot or a criminal?
Yeah.
Like, take your pick.
Yeah. So I guess in this case,
and the problem is when you're the government, that's really hard, because the second you admit, okay, this was just a control thing, it's like, well, how much of the rest of it?
Yeah. So what else, right? And then in that case, it's really tough to not be like, okay, well, now I want a side of fries, right? So
exactly,
like what after you get what you want. So I mean, it's rough. Hopefully. Gosh, man, and I seriously, like, I root for the people of Iran. I think the last arrest count that I saw was like 1,000. So the fact that it reached that milestone, I think, is pretty big.
Yeah, it's a lot of arrests.
It's a lot of arrests, but the government is really pushing back. I mean, they're doing everything they can. They're controlling their social media platforms. They're controlling news outlets. They're controlling everything, right, to try and convince the people that, what you heard about her is false, so stop protesting. Your protests come from lies. They're trying to push that agenda, which is really making everything worse. So
yeah, it's a bold strategy.
Yeah. Well, especially because they've seen the truth. So it's like, okay.
Yeah, and the problem is it won't work. It's not going to work with the Kurdish population, because the politics of the Kurdish people is very, very. I mean, it's a population without a state, right? So it's an ethnic group that has no country. Exactly. So the people are split between Turkey, Iran, Iraq, and Syria, with about a quarter of the population in each one of those countries, and each of those countries not really liking them and trying to keep them suppressed. But at the same time, they're an ethnic group that's going, look, we just want to be left alone.
Right. I mean, honestly,
on the land we've always lived on.
So I feel like it's kind of like, I think a good comparison is like the indigenous people that live in the Amazon rainforest. Sorry to go back to Brazil, but like it's kind of like them. Like, like, do you claim Bolivia? Do you claim Colombia? Right? Because the Amazon rainforest kind of goes into a bunch of different, geographically, it spills into a bunch of different countries. Right. So it's, like, are you Venezuelan? Are you, but you're indigenous people that live in a rainforest that, technically when you're there, you don't really care for a border in that sense that, like, I claim Venezuela.
A geopolitical border. They just go, no,
we're this tribe. Yeah, this is our tribe. So yeah, it's kind of like that. It's kind of like the Kurdish people of Iran. So seriously, Godspeed. Man, I hate that it's affecting the supply chain. In this case, I understand, but it's like, God, like, I mean,
it's not the best time in the world for oil to be like, as volatile as it is. But again, what I'm saying is, I'm surprised it hasn't driven the price up more.
Yeah, I know. Especially like if you look at what's going on in the EU too. Like they just had an inflation print last week, 10.7%. Right? They have a double-digit handle on inflation, which
that's not good.
Yeah,
it's the most inflation. Yeah, the UK had it too. They were 10.8 or something.
Yeah, the UK was awful. Yeah, but like I forget. I saw this guy who's a Bloomberg International. He's on Bloomberg International, the news network or whatever it was. And this dude, he was hilarious. Hugh Hendry, I think was his name, but he was basically like, the jokers at the ECB, literally word for word what he said, the jokers of the ECB are the blindest of all central bankers. So I was like, wow, I appreciate you calling.
That's how you really feel.
Yeah, I know. Like, I was like, man, that's really.
I'll be honest.
Honestly, man,
I understand why he's saying that, and I understand he's pretty close to the truth. The real issue is that Turkey has the blindest central bankers.
Okay, fine.
Because they're still trying quantitative easing. They're trying to ease their way out of inflation. It's just not going to work.
Yeah, I mean, like, I'm so tired of talking about Turkey because they're so stupid. It's idiocy. That's
all I was going to say. I was just going to be like, nope. It's just these guys. They're trying to ease their way out.
What's their CPI handle? Okay. It's like 78% now, and they're still trying. The President Erdogan is still like, hey, why are we not spending more money? Like, don't raise interest rates.
It's 83%.
Oh my God. Okay, so it's worse than I thought. And I thought I was stretching the truth by saying 78%, but I guess I wasn't.
But there are, okay, so apparently the Inflation Research Group has estimated that the actual inflation in Turkey right now is 186.27%.
Yeah, so...
Right, so let's be fair. It's somewhere between 83 and 183.
Which is still, nowhere in that range is good.
No.
So, we're
in the U.S. we're apoplectic over the 8-9% we're seeing.
Yeah, exactly.
Like it's
yeah. But that's them. But even then, I still think to call the central bankers of the ECB, to call them jokers, I still think is an insult to jokers.
Jokers are trying to do that, are doing it on purpose,
and it's at least funny, right? But with the ECB, it's really not that funny.
No, but at the same time,
it's a lot of the same issues. It's a lot of the same issues here, right? It's like they have an $8.5 trillion balance sheet, 8.5 trillion euros. This is right, which really translates to $8.5 trillion nowadays. But they have that balance sheet that they haven't even talked about QT yet.
No,
right?
they're
the U.S. We're already
the U.S. was
we're at least talking about.
The U.S. was late when it started making its move.
Yes,
earlier
way
this
late.
year.
Way late.
So the fact that
a year late.
The fact that the ECB hasn't started considering, it's like, not only are you late, everybody knows you're but everybody's sitting here going, hey, you're going to do this? Whatever.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how it plays out,
Eventually.
especially because, Germany is really taking a hit right now because they're really nat gas dependent. Also, Germany, their economy is really struggling. Like, it seems like the EU, there's like a power shakeup. It's now like the main heads in charge of the EU, where it used to be Germany. Now it seems like, Emmanuel Macron from France seems like he's really punching up, right? I feel like he might be the biggest guy in the EU now. Either him or Giorgia Meloni from Italy is also, between her and Emmanuel Macron, there's like a power battle to see who's the more powerful person in the EU.
Yeah, so it's put this way. So Germany's got a few problems. So they've got we have drought affecting the river commerce. We have the fact that the Nord Stream pipelines have been damaged, essentially have been bombed. They've been sabotaged. Russia's claiming that Britain did it, which, look, I would never put it past the British to do something to spite the Germans. But at the same time...
Well, the other thing that
they did.
Yeah, I would be hard-pressed to believe that the English people did do it. But also, the other thing that they claimed that happened to the Nord Stream pipeline was Russian negligence, which I think is also code for we did it. But we didn't try to do it. Yeah. But we kind of did try to do it.
Yeah, it's very much one of those, it's either negligence or deliberate actions by the Russians that caused this, because it was both of them. It was both pipelines. So it's not like, it strains credulity to believe that it was an accident and that it wasn't them. Yeah. You finally have a point now where there's a nat gas, if not surplus, there's a supply waiting at Europe, because there's tankers with nat gas waiting outside the ports in Germany, UK, and France. So now it's the ability to actually get it off the boats and into the countries at a reasonable rate.
What's kind of the hurdle there? Why is that taking forever?
It just takes if I have a port that only has 6 docks with 6 cranes, I could only unload 6 ships at a time.
So are they unloading at max capacity?
Yeah, they're unloading at max capacity right now, and so everything that's there that exceeds that is just surplus that's waiting off the coast.
Oh, and I guess in this case they're not really dependent on nat gas coming in from these ports. They're usually dependent on nat gas coming in from pipelines.
Yeah, so they have exactly the bottleneck is the ability to offload a nat gas from a boat. Oh. So that's what's happening now.
And the rivers are dry, which doesn't help.
The rivers are down, which you transport things over rivers. So if you're seeing France is kind of pushing back, is kind of being a little more resurgent, it's that France is less dependent on Russian energy.
Oh, yeah.
And then also that it's built an economy that's a little less dependent on the Rhine and the rivers, so like major rivers. It's that France is not being affected in the same ways. It's also further away from the Russians.
Yeah, it's way further away.
We don't have to. We're not dealing. So they're not dealing with as many refugees. They're not dealing with the threat of someone else entering the war. They're not.
Yeah. Well, and they're not dealing with refugees in the same way like Italy would be dealing with refugees, right?
Yeah. Or Italy is currently getting nat gas through its pipeline from Russia.
Because they
for whatever reason. And
which I don't really want to speculate, but it's happening, right? Giorgia Meloni, for some reason, there was a deal struck. And they're getting oil from Russia. So yeah, it's kind of a power battle, which like, the UK kind of dodged a bullet from avoiding this, but at the same time, they also have their own issues. I mean, they've made themselves so much smaller.
They dodged a bullet. They dodged a.
There's a bullet.
They
dodged a bullet and they jumped in front of an RPG as they left the flight path of the bullet.
The UK is kind of like, it's like, we didn't get hit by that car. And it's like, yeah, but you're running on the track toward a train.
Yeah, so
I don't know what you're.
I'm just saying. I'm just saying they maybe at one point could have gotten hit by both, but I don't think so.
That's true. They could have gotten hit by both at one point,
but I don't think
now
so.
They're just getting.
Yeah, the odds of that happening was very low. It was probably going to be between one or the other. But here we are. Like they have that. I mean, I don't know. I think Sunak or Rishi Sunak, I think is maybe going to turn the franchise around.
I don't envy him.
I don't either. I don't want to inherit that kind of mess. But he, at the end of the day, he's worth $800 million, which, to put in context, is more than Tom Brady and Giselle. Rest in peace, their marriage.
I saw a very funny joke about it, that when he was moving into 10 Downing Street, or he went in, he didn't take his wife with him, and they're like, oh, did someone have to explain to her
that she needs to pay domicile taxes, or
one, but two, it's like, oh, did someone explain to her that this is an apartment? This is a townhome, not the full estate. Is that why she didn't want to go?
The thing is, like Rishi Sunak, like his wife's dad. I just found this out. Like his wife's dad is the founder of Infosys.
Yeah,
multi-billionaire.
No, that's why do you think she was able to get away with not paying estate taxes?
I know, and
or domicile taxes. I'm sorry.
Well, but I mean, so we talked about last week. Why didn't they nominate him first? Right? I think that was why. Right? That scandal. I think just the fact that they brought it up. I think that just kind of resonated.
I think part of
his affiliation with Boris Johnson, right? Maybe that's their, the voter reasoning for him not being. But
I'll be honest, though, in the Tory party, I have a sneaking suspicion it has something else. That there might be a shade of truth to his skin color having an effect on it.
No, fair enough.
Maybe it's just that he got his MBA in the US instead of in the UK.
And maybe that was it too. I don't know, right? Or maybe it was the scandals that he was associated with or near.
Yeah, which again, it's not great. Yeah. But at the same time, he's economically competent.
Yeah, exactly. And he's got a huge franchise to turn around, and it's a big task.
We'll see if he can reboot them as well as House of the Dragon did Game of Thrones, right? So let's just see.
Yeah,
see how
but
that goes.
speaking of turning franchises around, if you're bringing the conversation back over to the U.S. like we said we would, I forget where we left off because that was at least 3 or 4 drams.
Well, I guess we could start up with what do the U.S. and Germany have in common right now, and it's that.
Let's start there.
The Mississippi River is at what, historic lows?
Yes, it's at its record lows. A lot of areas of the Mississippi are considered "quote unquote" impassable, which is not good for the current problem that we're sitting on, which is diesel shortage.
Yeah, the Mississippi River's down nearly 11 feet in 3 states.
Yeah, so drought. Big time droughts. But we've seen this. Last year, not very much rainfall. This year, also not very much precipitation. Mm-hmm. Before we get there, I want to talk about GDP. Is that cool with you? Can we put a bookmark here?
Yeah, we absolutely can.
Because I just kind of more macro. We're at 30,000 feet. Let's go up to 40,000 feet. GDP numbers came out, which I think is, probably the headline news of last week. Q3 GDP. So the months of, what would that be? July through September.
Yeah.
GDP results came in. It grew at 2.6%, while the expectation was 2.4%. I'll be dead honest with you, a 2.4% expectation. That was why are we expecting 2.4%? And I say that because I thought it was going to be lower. I thought it was going to be 0 to negative.
I expected very close to 0.
Okay, so you too. But we got 2.6%. And I'm glad to be wrong. That's good news. That's good news. That's kind of like what we talked about earlier in the episode. Good news is bad news, but this is actually good news. The economy is growing. Apparently, it's a quote unquote soft landing, but I have my suspicions. I'll touch on them in a little bit. Once we lay out a little bit more of the facts. Durable good orders down 0.2%. Expectations were up 0.6%. So durable good orders are down. GDP up. Let's see what else is going on. Home sales down 10%, or pending home sales down 10%.
Existing home sales down 10%. Consumer spending down, or only up 1.4%, but down from 2% in Q2. Yeah, about the only thing I've seen that's up, and this is kind of one of those things where it's like, well, I think fiscal and monetary policy are absolutely not doing very different things is that, I mean, what was government spending at?
Government spending was at last I saw it was at 6.3. It was 6.28 or whatever. Let's round up to 6.3 trillion.
6.27 trillion.
$6.3 trillion this year already. So we still have another 2 months, let's just say, right? 2 months, the rest of November and then all of December. We still have 2 months of fiscal spending. The target budget is around 7.88 trillion, I think.
Yeah.
Is what I saw.
And so maybe
they could spend up to that much.
They're planning to.
Yeah, they're planning to spend another. Yeah, but even then, spending $1 trillion is so hard. But then again, leave it to the government to be good at doing that.
The government makes it look easy.
God, yeah. I mean, whatever. But yeah, that's kind of my suspicion is, okay, GDP is up. Why in the world could it possibly be up? Because government spending has been $6.3 trillion so far this year.
I'd say that. I'd say that's what you're looking at. You're looking at you have government spending quite a bit of money. Yeah. And it doesn't help that you've also got people you also have people in businesses who are buying their raw materials now because they're going, the prices are they're through the roof. So we just buy now because we expect them to continue. Inflation isn't going anywhere but up. It's there. So if you're sitting here, you're like, well, I better buy it because I don't want to pay 8% more in a month's time.
By the next inflation print, it's going to be that much more expensive. So, I mean, I remember I texted you that and you said, okay, government expenditures are probably carrying the load. And I was like, oh my God, I didn't even think about that. That's actually a really good point.
Yep.
Because, they keep buying things and shipping them to Ukraine, which, I'm okay with, right? Like, I think Russia taking over Ukraine is a really bad look on the world because I think it's a really big if they are successful in that.
That's a big if.
Yeah. But if they are, which I hope they are not, but if they are, I think it kind of opens the door for China to go, okay, well, if you guys can do it, we can take Taiwan, which I think that would be much worse. If you think about 90% of the chips that are in the U.S.
It'd be problematic
90% of the high-level chips in the U.S. are, in Taiwan. So, I think if that happens, first of all, it's just not good for the global supply chain, but it also opens the door for China to take Taiwan, which is also even worse for the global supply chain. But either way, the spending on that boosts GDP.
The military industrial complex makes a lot of money.
Yeah, which I think, and this is the funny thing. I mean, I remember I saw that rowing competition. It's a rowing competition where there's 3 guys on each side of the rowboat, but they're facing each other. So 3 versus 3, they're facing each other, and they're trying to row the boat towards the other side of the pool. If you're backed up against your side of the pool, then you lose, right? So you have to row as hard as you can forward and back the opponents to their side of the pool. Right. So I saw a video of that competition and the caption was the federal government spending money while the
Federal Reserve is tightening monetary policy.
Trying to reduce inflation. And I was like, what a perfect analogy for that, because the Federal Reserve is doing everything they can. They already did QT, which if you really think about it, what's her name? Mary Daly, who, I've villainized plenty of times, but I think she's actually right in this. She kind of talked about the QT cycle, which is, the reduction of the balance sheet at the pace of about $95 billion a month. She talked about that like it's the equivalent of an increase of overnight federal funds rate by 75 basis points, which I think is pretty, that's a fair quote on the equivalent of that.
Yeah.
Could it become more later? Absolutely. But right now, it's about that, I would say. And between QT and between them doing these quote unquote jumbo rate hikes, which I don't think 75 basis points is really that jumbo. If they had any balls, the jumbo rate hike would be 100 basis points.
Gotta go to 100. Because 75 hasn't done anything. It is not having the result they expect, or if it is, then they need to up their expectation.
Yeah, you're 100% right, but I think the only reason why it hasn't done anything is because the federal government has been spending so much money, and they're spending money like drunken sailors, and the deficit is through the the deficit has always been bad. The deficit has been bad since Bill Clinton. But the deficit is awful now. And with this kind of spending, it's still going to continue to be worse. And this is kind of why I talked about last week. Modern monetary theory, I think, is losing credibility. And if it isn't, it should.
Well, just the concept eventually you won't be able to sell your bonds. That one. Yeah. Like the day will come where you can't, where no one's willing to buy.
Yeah, exactly. And then from there, how else are you going to finance? Are you going to finance the amount of money that you're spending?
Then you print.
Yeah, you have to print.
You have to print.
What happens when you do that?
Runaway inflation.
Exactly, which is worse than what we're seeing right now. So that's why I don't believe in money. I really don't. I believe in I didn't even know what this was. Apparently, this is like the opposite side of modern monetary theory, but it's fiscal theory of price level, which like why it's called that, I have no idea. But it's basically like, think of the economy as a wallet. Money being spent means money needs to be coming in at that rate or more. You know, if you don't have it, you can't spend it.
Yeah.
So it's essentially that, but it's kind of like, you know, tied between the monetary arm and the fiscal policy arm, and how intertwined those two arms are.
Oh, where a government, we're essentially saying where a government might cause inflation or allow to move unchecked for a while inflation, so that when it pays back its debt, it pays back a smaller debt because of deflated value of currency.
Yeah, because one of deflated value of currency, but at the same time, it's like, okay, well, guess who's in charge of monetary policy? You are. Speaking to the federal government, right? Like you're in charge of monetary policy, right? So if you're in a ton of debt,
or fiscal policy theory, if you're in charge of fiscal policy, I guess in the U.S. specifically, we can say that the federal government isn't directly in charge of monetary policy.
Of course, yeah,
it's indirectly in charge.
Yeah, exactly. So the thing is, like, if you're in a lot of debt, you know, what can you do? You can push interest rates down, and then from there refinance your debt, which they certainly did. And if you think about it, the Federal Reserve, like, they have made so much money. They made anywhere from $4 billion to $12 billion a month. They transfer anywhere from like $70 to $88 billion to the Treasury because of how much money they've made from the assets in their balance sheet, because, you know, they would buy these bonds that are super high interest rate or high coupon yielding bonds. And then when they lower interest rates, it's like, all right, well, now these bonds are being sold at a premium. We can unload them off our balance sheet and then send money to the Treasury. So that's been happening for a super long time. And then, of course, you know, now they're sleeping in the bed that they laid, because the Federal Reserve balance sheet is now deep into the red. Or if it's not already deep into the red, it's going to be deep into the red, because interest rate risk is kicking in to the assets that they're currently holding in the balance sheet. So that's my spiel. I don't know how I got there. But basically, what I'm trying to say is... Are you
just trying to say the beatings will continue until morale improves?
Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. Because
like, that's all I'm hearing is
I feel like I feel like any other narrative is just like a pipe dream right now. Because honestly, like, we have positive GDP growth. Jolt's numbers looked great, right? They came in way above expectations. You know, 1 million more openings than expected.
That's
which
huge.
Is just stupid.
And
like
then 0.3%, so 30 basis points above of GDP growth above what was expected, right? So that's
so it's like, so all these things are looking good, right? So it's like, okay, so far the Fed is navigating a soft landing, which I don't think they are, but on paper they are, because like if you look at the facts, if you just look at the numbers and nothing else, this looks like a soft landing. On top of that, private payrolls have also increased substantially, right? Because I thought, you know, okay, job openings up 1 million more. Like there's that many more job openings and help wanted signs than expected. Was it because the federal government has already spent $6 trillion this year, and there's a bunch of public jobs open, and they're looking for, I don't know, more policemen, firefighters, teachers, IRS agents? Like, is that why there's all these job openings? And then you look at private payrolls. Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, possibly. But that's what I thought it was for a second. And then you look at private payrolls, and it's like, okay, well, no, it's not just that.
No, it's very much so it's like we
still have all these help wanted signs up, and you know everybody is announcing job cuts and all that kind of stuff. But private payrolls are still up like crazy. So I'm in the camp right now where it's like, okay, the Fed, they need to grow a pair. There's no other way around it, and the actual government needs to stop spending so much money.
Yeah, there's some issues.
Exactly, and let's just, you know, putting it politely, the Inflation Reduction Act. I know you've been critical of it, as have I.
Well, yeah,
I think it's totally warranted. I'm not sorry about it, but either way, I think we were talking about diesel demand before. So let's just
we hadn't gotten to it, but I've looked at it because we were talking kind of yesterday. But it's that diesel inventories are at the lowest level in 70 years or something.
Was it 70 years
on the East Coast? But since the 1950s or 1951.
Oh,
so it's
okay, yeah, that's right. Yeah, so but
it's specifically on the East Coast, and it's actually this is what's really funny, because we were in Atlanta and we stopped at a gas station and we were pulling in, and I looked and I went, huh. That's weird. because they'd yellow bagged the diesel pumps.
That's so weird because like the East, like even in Atlanta, if that's happening in Atlanta, think about how much worse it is in the Northeast. Because the Northeast is like, for some reason, that's like, you know, when it comes to like energy and things like that, it's like the, you know, the rough end of the stick in U.S. supply chain.
Well, when you get, of course, when you get up into the Northeast, you have, because think about this, like between New York City, Boston, and like Philadelphia, they're three absolutely massive cities, and then areas around them. Like,
oh yeah, I mean, they're
just going to consume more because,
yeah, I mean, well, and like, you know, what about like Buffalo, right, which is also up there too. I mean, think about how many big cities are up there, and they consume a lot of things. So the demand is certainly there, but with, you know, the Mississippi River being so low in water, I mean, that's not helping the cause at all. On top of that, I mean, one of the big things is gas prices, right? Like, how do you make diesel? Gas is used to burn crude oil, which essentially creates diesel. Gas is expensive.
Yeah.
So when gas is expensive, you know, refineries are not as inclined to produce diesel because it's like, okay, well, the profit margins are much slimmer here because gas is expensive.
So, I mean, and if we're talking about the Northeast, like I was just doing some quick math. Roughly 10% of the population of the United States lives in the New York, Boston, and Philadelphia metro areas.
Gosh.
And that's to say nothing of like the whole state of New Jersey and like Connecticut, and
Massachusetts,
and all those,
New Hampshire,
the rest of Massachusetts,
the
rest of that northeastern corridor, like that whole area. It's just like, okay, this is, I mean, there's a lot of people there.
Yeah, well, like, and you left out Providence, right? Providence is a massive city, right, up in Rhode Island. Maine's a big state. That's a lot of energy. And then if you go into the colder months, like, what do you need to heat up your homes when the brutality of winter shows up?
Or you need diesel to get trucks that are moving other fuel sources, right? So it's a pretty serious problem. I know they're saying in the Northeast or in the East Coast there's a 22 days supply, and in the Northeast they're saying they need to prepare to ration. What they say is there's a 22-day supply. It's not until it runs out. It's just until you run into shortages. So it's 22 days until shortages actually begin.
Yeah. So that's when, like,
and that's a problem.
Yeah, but like the shortages are really, I mean, they're already telling people to, you know, hey, between these hours, stop using so much energy. Don't turn on these lights at the same time. Don't, you know, if you can, don't use a stove.
Yeah. So
I don't know what else they use, but yeah, they're already saying those things. There isn't much diesel left. Is basically the moral of the story. I mean, we're running into diesel inventory shortages. It's lowest level since 1951, and there was talk about price caps. Can we real quick talk about why that's not a good idea?
The really basic idea of how markets work is that as there's a smaller supply of something and demand remains the same or increasing, you see price increase to balance how that works. And the problem is if you put a cap on that, you disincentivize essentially the production. In the long run, you can disincentivize the production of the product. So in this case, diesel. On the other hand, so it's a double-edged sword. You want to keep diesel prices low because you want your truckers to be able to drive. You want your farmers to be able to run their equipment and harvest what they need to harvest. You want to cap it so that it doesn't just become, well, the wealthy can afford it and anyone else is shit out of luck. And so it's that double-edged sword. But the problem is when you're running into a real supply issue like this, a real shortage like this, if the plan then is, okay, we're just going to cap the price so that it doesn't necessarily help, because it might convince people who are otherwise be like, well, I don't necessarily need to do this, but I'm going to do it anyway.
Well, I mean, long story short, it just sounds like if there is a price cap on it, you run out of supply much faster. You're think about it this way: the supply goes to zero sooner, or essentially goes to shortage sooner. You consume what you have faster, than otherwise, because the higher price would disincentivize some people from consuming. Yeah. And it's at the end of the day, what we're trying to say is, like, I mean, this is a rough situation with diesel supply. We've got 22 days left. There have been talks about a price cap. It's not going to, I don't think it's ever going to happen. Like, you might see in some places temporary price caps, or rather, what happens when what really happens when you have a price cap like that is you also then see supply cap. Yeah, essentially, you can buy 5 gallons at blank price. That's it. Okay, and then or you can buy 50 gallon. We won't sell you more than 50 gallons. We won't sell anyone more than 50 gallons. So in that case, like I hear you, and I think if there is a price cap, there should be a supply cap. Just kind of like, whenever you see a deal at the grocery store, like these bag of Doritos,
limit 2.
Exactly. So hopefully that is the situation. I don't know if it will be, but hopefully it is, because I think at the end of the day, if there's just a price cap and a price cap alone, it's like the person with
it does nothing. It helps people who can't afford to bid, but it doesn't help the supply issue because it doesn't disincentivize superfluous and tertiary jobs, right? So driving a half full truck isn't a good idea from a team's perspective, from a money perspective, but from a fuel perspective, it's maybe this truck has to wait here an extra day before it drives full to the next destination to maximize the use of the diesel.
Max productivity, but at the same time, it's also
at the cost of delivery speed.
Yeah, but like if there is a price cap, it's like me and you, like our free cash flow is like $10 for diesel. Let's just, I mean, might be more, might be less. Trying to use humble numbers here. But like if let's say we each have $10 for, free cash flow this week for the price for diesel, for whatever reason, right? But ExxonMobil or whoever else it might, whatever big giant corporation, their free cash flow this week is certainly a lot more than $10. So they can just buy as much diesel as they humanly can while there is a price cap, and then from there, within their own business, they can create another market.
Yeah.
And then just exploit profits in that manner, right? Which, I'm not saying they do or don't do that, but I'm just saying, like, they can. You and I can't, because, to compete in the free cash flow battle with a giant corporation that trades in the S&P 500, we don't have
the cash to do it, so it's not going to work.
We're going to lose every time. But I mean, I don't know. To me, that's really, really concerning. I wanted to talk about the diesel shortage just because I think, as we head into the winter months. I mean, I don't know. I'm kind of speechless about this.
You don't expect to see in the United States fuel shortages. You don't. We're a net exporter of energy, but that means that you should never see shortages.
Well, so do you think, the Jones Act is something that, real quick, I want to touch on too? Like, do you think there's going to be some waivers in the Jones Act? Because the Jones Act essentially is just, if you are a foreign cargo ship. Let's put it this way. Let's talk about what it is. Like, if you're a foreign cargo ship, the Jones Act says that you can't transfer stuff from one U.S. port to another U.S. port if you're a foreign cargo ship, which unfortunately in U.S. ports, like they are. So the Jones Act, I think it's a really outdated act, anyways.
Yeah, the Jones Act is over 100 years old, and you're exactly right. So what it says is, in order for it to transfer cargo between two U.S. ports, you have to be an American-owned or a permanent resident in the United States, essentially.
Which is ridiculous because it's
protectionist.
Yeah, which I get.
It has historically led to problematic prices for the cost of goods in Hawaii, Puerto Rico, really any U.S. overseas territory. Yeah. So you asked about waivers. Puerto Rico already has a waiver to the Jones Act.
Yes.
Following Hurricane Ian. It's just FEMA has agreed that FEMA gave the waiver and just went, we got to get resources here as quickly as possible. I think it doesn't matter.
We're going to need a lot more than just that one, though. Like, I mean, honestly, like right now, in many cases, it's easier to load a full ship of cargo and ship it over to Istanbul, Turkey, right? Or some other country, whatever it is, than it is to Boston.
Yeah,
right?
It might be just because of this. There's a much bigger pool of ships if you don't worry about where it's owned. than if you do.
So I don't know. And it's does the waiver of all the, let's just say the entire act, does that solve the diesel supply crisis?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't solve it. It's not going to solve it alone. You have other factors that are going to play in, but you need to do something to alleviate the movement, because we know that supply chain is the problem. It's the problem isn't necessarily production. The problem isn't the consumption, and the problem is getting from A to B. Right. That's the problem in Germany. That's the problem in the UK. That's the problem in Australia. That's the problem in the US. It's the problem in China. Yeah. That's the problem.
Yeah.
And so
so
with that in mind, it's just a.
Well, if you need to alleviate the problem of you staying warm, one of the things you can do, just an idea, is you can maybe just get like a Drunkenomics hoodie.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if you're jonesing for some sweet gear, check us out at drunkenomics.myspreadshop.com.
That's what it is.
And you can find the hoodies. You can find the same clothes that if you want to be credible at the Atlanta Fed, if you want to be the only credible thing at the Atlanta Fed.
Oh my gosh!
Like I was this week.
Because we know that ain't Jonathan Bostic.
You gotta grab some sweet Drunkenomics merch. Yeah. If you're already too credible for school. If you already got that waiver from FEMA and you're not jonesing for some sweet stuff, you should check it out at patreon.com/drunkenomics, DRUNKENOMICS.
Yes, you can leave a tip in the tip jar.
Exactly.
Any support, we very much appreciate it.
Absolutely, we do.
And I'll say this, dude. I actually like Bostic as one of the governors that I actually do like. And even then,
he has no problem saying what he needs to say. The problem is I don't know if sometimes I think he's talking too much, and sometimes I think he doesn't argue persuasively enough in the committee meetings.
Well, all I'm gonna say is if you do leave a tip in the Drunkenomics tip jar, or if you are caught wearing a Drunkenomics hoodie, and if you are wearing a Drunkenomics hoodie, please tag us in it. We'd love seeing that. I'm just gonna give you a lot more credibility than Jonathan Bostic. You know, just saying, not bragging, just saying, right?
It's definitely, but I think in my pictures you can't see that I'm wearing the hoodie, but it's because it was a little chilly.
I definitely can, dude. But I can spot that logo from anywhere. Also, I had some logos. Did you see those logos?
I did.
What'd you think? I mean,
above here.
What'd you think? They were very punk rocky. But
I like it.
That's my style. I mean, you know me. That's my style. Punk rock is my style.
I'm down to clown.
Cool. I'm down to clown. Awesome. Well, if you're down to clown, then I will fill and kill and play chestnut checkers. How's that sound for you?
You know what? It sounds like you're keeping it drunkenomical. So I'm going to try and keep it drunkenomical. And I think we just need everyone out there who's listening to stay drunkenomical.
You know what? Cheers, my friend.
Cheers.